All right, all right, all right. We're live and direct. Greetings, family. This is Rasa Angola Tafari.
And I'm Jenna, and welcome to
People Talking Kali. Yes. We missed folks last weekend, July 4th weekend. We didn't have a show. A lot going on, a lot of scheduling conflicts. A beautiful couple of our, two students of ours became a couple and eventually got married. We were out at the wedding, but we missed the family. And we heard about you guys missing out on the show. So we're back here tonight. Now, if you're just tuning in, and this is the first time you've ever tuned in, People Talking Kali is a non-political live stream show designed to unite the entire Pakiti Tirshi Kali community, regardless of what camp or instructor that your lineage comes from. And at the same time, it's an interactive viewing experience so that you can interact and learn more about our guests. And tonight we do have a very special guest with us here. A legend in the game, okay? I first met Tuhon Nick Papadakis more than a few years ago at the Grand Global Alliance in Texas. And very laid back, very smooth, very go with the flow kind of mentality. And then I heard he was a dog brother. And once he turns that switch on, it's like a different person. And so over the years, again, I was able to meet Tuhon Nick at Danny and Asanto Academy. There's another great conversation that we had. But this whole experience has allowed us to reconnect, retalk, and we feel that Tuhon Nick has a very important role in the proliferation of Pakiti Tirshi Kali here in the States. We know some of the story. We want to know more of the story. And we think it's time for you to know it as well. So without further ado, we want to introduce our guest tonight, Tuhon Nick Papadakis. Thank you for coming out.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. This is really cool. I'm so glad we got to reconnect and everything and just spend some time talking, and looking forward to tonight.
Yes, sir. I want to really quick also give a shout out to one of our students, Rachel Pabalinas Massis. She helps promote the show. She's the one on the event page, folks, connecting with Tuhon Nick and helping spread. And so she's already tuned in saying she's here watching with us tonight. So we want to give her a shout out as well. All right. Tuhon, how you doing, sir? We like to start the show with a status check. Where you at in the world right now? What's going on your end?
Well, yeah, we're talking about 4th of July. I was going to say I had the best fireworks from my balcony out here, but pretty much 100% of the fireworks were illegal, but I've never seen that much fireworks in my life. It was literally like those CNN videos of Baghdad. It was, I mean, it was nonstop from probably from the time it got dark for 2 more hours straight. But yeah, it's a good time though.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah.
I think people were letting off steam. We've been quarantined pretty hard here in LA.
Yeah, we've been hearing about stuff, and all the way on the other coast, of course, with the news, you don't know what to believe. You believe somewhere in the middle, but it sounds like you guys are going through a difficult time. And how are you managing? Are you still having classes, or are those on timeout?
I definitely have class in the park. We social distance, we wear masks, they fall off, get sweat in them. But we stay not very close contact. And then I have a class on Monday nights. We've started that back up indoors, but that one's really tight. We take everybody's temperature first. We're always wiping down our hands, no contact at all there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, we've
trying to keep people engaged,
Yes, sir.
People are really looking to be physical, I think, right now.
Right.
I think one of the beauties of our system is that you can actually maintain a level of social distancing without making contact. Philadelphia went into a semi-green phase not too long ago, and we reinitiated classes, very much the same thing, masks, hand sanitizer. We started with CBOT,
Yeah.
Or a lot of just, and even if folks didn't necessarily want to make contact, they just kind of wanted to be in the space doing Kali, even if it was individual drills. So totally relate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like shameless plug, but KIL is getting a lot of people reaching out and stuff and wanting to get gear. I'd heard that actually like all the kettlebells, all the weights are sold out at all like the big fives and stuff. So people are really looking for something to do.
Right.
I know I've gone through everything on Netflix, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we definitely learned from the situation how much we take for granted with basic human contact. And for a system like the KT, where, you know, it literally means close quarters, it really implies close quarters. And it's, you know, a lot of your learning comes from contact. You know, you really are learning how to reshape teaching and learning in the system. So, you know,
That's a really good point.
yeah. So, you know, well, hopefully they'll get better over time. You know.
Yeah.
I'll just run with that because I know you have questions and stuff and we try to follow an outline, but when you said that making contact, I've heard a lot of stories like that. Well, I'll start with one is like some JKD guys I know, they were like, you know, they do Chi Sao and stuff, Wing Chun, and they'll be like, my instructor, and I've been doing it for a while. And then like their wife will, because the husband's not there. And so they're like, they start working. He goes, wait a second. It's like just working out with your husband, like the contact is the same.
Right.
And so there's that. And then like GrandTuon Leo Gaje, you know, when he trains you, he's really, you have to touch hands with him or sticks because he's programming you literally.
Yes.
And
There's
that's
something
one
in
of the
the
magical things about him.
Yeah.
there's something in the touch
Yeah.
that you know, it's interesting. You look at human beings and how we learn. A lot of our learning is from feedback from the environment. You know,
Absolutely.
it's a constant feedback loop with everything is a stimuli. And interesting, going back to what Jenna just said, contact is feedback. You
Yeah.
know? And just from a touch, just from the way you cross sticks, you can read a lot from an individual, almost where they're at with their temperament.
Yeah.
And in the same, when you're touching hands with the masters in the GrandTuhon, he could transmit so much information just with that touch, just from the sensation of that touch.
Yeah. Have you ever read that book, Blink?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, you dig it because it's basically everything you just said is kind of in it. But just they say like the second you see somebody, I mean, there's a lot of like more sophomoric versions of this, but the second you see something, you gather so much information left over from like when we had to fight saber-tooth tigers and things like the primitive, that we don't even realize how much information, you know, that you gather just in the instant. And I think that's the same thing with making contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it.
So-
I'm gonna check out that book.
Yeah.
So I think and even if we're not aware of it, we're all missing that.
Yeah,
You know,
because sometimes then you try to go back to the intellectual of it. I mean, there is an intellectual property to that, but you then go back and you basically try to talk yourself out of what you already know, or just back it up with basically bullshit. Like you just like, well, I'm going to make this sound smart. And you're like, I knew from the beginning that was like one of the things was they pulled these things out of the ground, these statues, and this guy goes, those aren't real. And they're like, no, these are ancient statues. And he goes, no. And he just he just knew, because your first instinct's usually right, was kind of the shorthand of that. And so sometimes you need to trust that.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, if you're just tuning in, all right, we always like to, talk a little bit, have a little icebreaker in the beginning, give folks a chance to tune in. We got some viewers we just want to shout out to, Tuhon Nick, who are tuning into the show. We got Texas Rob 28, my brother Rob out in Maryland. We finally cracked the code on who my brother is. I've known this brother over years. Some funny backstory stuff with some recent episodes. He's tuning in. We have Mandala RV Guard as well from New York. We got Tuhon Jack Latour representing the PTI Academy, saying hello to everyone. our friend Byron White, whom we originally met in Kentucky. I don't know where he is now. I remember you moved, sir.
Yeah.
My best to you. He's tuning in. He's a PTK student as well, Tuhon. Okay, we got PTK GTS in the house shouting us out. That's a big salute. So glad to have you on. I'm hoping believing that's Agalon Jade. That's our sister. And, you know, just connecting with her recently has been great. And just connecting with the GTS side of things has just been great. So great to have you on the show, sister. And Dr. Byron Stoops, Tuhon Nick is one of my mentors in the Dog Brothers and PTK. Filipino martial arts, a great fighter, a great technician, and a great person, and pleased to know you. And we're pleased to know you too, Doctor. Thanks for tuning into the show and supporting. Kali Doug is in the house.
Hey.
Marsh,
Yes.
you know, another great support, former guest, as Jenna said, PTK Warrior. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if you're PTK, but the Combat Warrior Academy is also tuning in.
Yep.
The Nomads in the house. That's Mandala. MNG Royce, soon to be Mandala. I'm sure he's on the way. But MNG Royce Ramos and Sensei Frankie from New York also.
Yep.
And Byron's in North Carolina. Thank you guys for all tuning in to the show. We're honored to have Tuhon Nick here. We're honored to pick his brain. Tuhon, how did you get started in PTK? How did this journey begin for you?
So this is, I have like a version of a story, and it's got to be pretty correct. I trained at the martial arts school in the front of my subdivision. And so how it goes is a neighbor when he signed up, he got like these 3, what we used to call Chinese stars, but I guess shurikens, right? They were made out of black metal, and they were so cool. And if you signed up, you got those. So I signed up, but I got rubber chucks. They were out of the Chinese stars, but it was pretty cool. My instructor's name was Al Solomon, and he was pretty, he was into Kung Fu, karate, and jujitsu. And he was really into cross training, and he was a really good martial artist and very open-minded. But at the time, Bill McGrath and Ricky Riera came through and did a demo at a karate tournament we did, and then they started teaching classes in the evening, if our classes were Tuesdays and Thursdays, they would do Thursday. So that was my exposure to Filipino martial arts. So it was very early on. I mean, maybe 81 maybe. And so at that point, the way I tell it is I was kind of done with the karate, and then I immediately cut my mom's broom handles off and made sticks out of them. She got mad at me, but I made sticks. Whoa, that's pretty telling. Yeah. And then
where was this, Tuhon, that you saw then?
This was in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and later on, I connected with Ricky Riera, who's passed on, but a great guy. And then that's where I met Erwin Ballarta, because then I moved to Austin after high school. Yep. And then a shout out to my other instructor that I got my black belts under, who was at the same school, Kurt Doyle in Houston, Texas. So he continued my progress in Kali, but then I moved to Austin, and then there's a lot more with Master Kurt Doyle, but he was also had a very open mindset, started introducing the BJJ when that came around and things like that. But then for Pikiti Tersha, it really was Erwin Ballarta. So now Tuhon Erwin Ballarta. He was the one that decided that he was going to make instructors instead of students, and started us with mechanics. And we just drilled the mechanics. And later I moved to LA, but then I'd always come back to check in with everybody and train and go to the mastery camps and things. So, and that's where I met Arvi, and of course Leslie Buck, who, although we're the same height. I kind of feel like he's like one of my instructors. I mean, he is. I mean, he was bringing stuff back from Leo Gaje, and bringing stuff back to us. I watched his interview, and so a lot of those things, there's a lot of crossover there. But he was bringing that back. He was the leader of the group essentially. He was actually a voted in position, but he was doing a lot of traveling to the Philippines and bringing the material back. So,
so you were making sure I'm getting back to Texas I want to make sure I stay connected to that.
Yeah, my training took a big dive because after class we would go for breakfast tacos, and they don't have breakfast tacos in LA. They have breakfast burritos,
Right.
which is just, you really have to know what you want when you want a breakfast burrito, because you only get one choice. With a breakfast taco, you can have 3 or 4 different kinds of, versions of your breakfast taco.
Yeah.
So my colleagues suffered a little bit, but I got back on track.
Wow.
What brought you out to LA?
I went to the American Film Institute, came out from graduate school.
Okay.
So I came out to be a filmmaker.
We're definitely gonna talk about that during this episode, but just to kind of stick with the PTK journey.
Yeah.
Was it at that time there was no PTK in the LA region?
Well, so here's kind of, when I was in Texas, a lot of the times I was in Houston and I would drive to San Antonio, or if I was in Austin, I'd drive to San Antonio to see Ricky, or I'd drive to Austin because Inosanto had a seminar, or Dallas. So it wasn't like, you didn't have the internet back then. You would actually have to get a city's yellow pages, and you'd have to look up the martial arts, and you go, do they have a Kali class? And usually it would say karate. And they would, like, if they had a big ad, they would also put, and Kali classes on Friday, or whatever.
Right.
Or, they'd have their list of systems. And so I had to go around and see who was there. And then you have to make an introduction, or you'd have to drive really far. And GrandTuhon had been all through Texas, Big Springs and Houston, and then Nashville. So he had instructors kind of that had a little bit, some had a little bit, some had a lot, and you had to kind of track them down and piece it together a little bit. This was very early on, because you couldn't, there might be a Panther Press video or something, but you had to piece it together or go find that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the similar story to that period of time, late 70s, early 80s, where you really had to hunt for Pikiti. You were grateful, it seemed like, for whatever you could get, and you were trying to connect it to whatever other Pikiti you interfaced with.
Yeah.
As like a comparative analysis or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful to hear that part of the history here in the States. At what point, so you had met GT in Texas?
No, I have not met him until, I think it's 2001, with Tuhon. Philip brought him down to Montreal, and we had a week-long seminar, and it was cool. Tuhon Dan Inosanto, or Guru Dan, as most people call him, because it just sounds really cool, and he is really cool and amazing. He came down too, and we just sequestered training. And it was cool. I was ready for it because it was like summer and it was like 100 degrees in the dojo, and I was ready for that because I was from Texas. So
Yeah,
it was good. Tuhon Loki was there. My good buddy JC was there. Tyler was there. Moran, Tuhon Tyler Moran. We were very young in the art, but it was a great time. Man, that was good.
Do you remember what was going on in that 100-degree training session?
A lot of striking, and we did some sparring, but it was really the introduction to the Tri-V for us. We kind of just hammered that because there was a lot of guys. There was a couple guys from Montreal that had some deep roots with Philip and other people that were Pikiti guys. They kind of were like did a lot in the 80s, then got families, and then we're coming back to it. And they had a really good mechanics, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a Tri-V intro for me. I mean, by the man, GrandTuhon.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
yeah, it was fun. And Joel was there, Guru Dan's assistant. You see him on the internet.
yeah.
He's quite a talented gentleman.
Sounds like a beautiful moment.
Yeah, yeah. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we are here with our honored guest, Tuhon Nick Papadakis. We have a couple of viewers who have just tuned in as well. We did get confirmation that the Combat Warrior Academy is actually Tuhon Jesse.
That's our man, Tuhon
Hey.
Jesse. GTS. Salute, good brother.
Yes.
Glad
Yeah.
glad to hear you on the show, man.
Yes.
Yep.
And we also have Alberto Perez giving his greetings to you as well.
That's right.
We have a Nomad colleague, which is M&G Voice. Just encouraging everyone to check out some of our older videos.
Folks,
the highlights.
like, subscribe. You know, I hate to do that on the show, but you know the routine for
Yes.
YouTube, you know. And Matthew Evans is also just saying hello, sir. Tuhon Nick is a great fighter and a great instructor. Such an awesome and welcoming person, an essential part of his dog brother's journey.
Who was that?
This is Matthew Evans.
Hey. Oh, what a great guy.
Yeah, and Tuhon Jason Nardi
Hey.
from Alaska tuning in, and he's saying he was there. I don't know specifically where he. Oh, okay.
I was just starting to think about, like, I know there was a lot of other people. Because I stayed at JC's apartment, or like a loft. It was so cool being in Montreal in a loft, and I slept in a hammock. It was super cool. Like, great times.
Yeah.
And you could do stuff like that.
You know, you're getting a lot of love, sir, you know, from your dog brother, the dog brotherhood. At what point did this come into your journey?
Right when I moved to LA, like, the first year of graduate school was like every second of the day was taken up. And then the second year, like, it's like law school, I guess. People always say drinking from the fire hose and all that stuff. Like, they literally were like every single day, all day, you had something to do. And then the second year was like, okay, you get asked back and you have to make a 16mm film. And your shoot dates are this week in May. Here's an office, here's a phone. You got to raise the money, see you. And you're all like sitting there with your team and you're like, what do we do? And you're just kind of like, because you don't really start until like 3 months before, really. So you're like painting the office, you know, putting your favorite film poster up, you know, writing, but that's it. So then it was like, what am I going to do? And it was like martial arts, you know, time to get back. So I went over to the Inasano Academy. I was a poor student, of course, Guru Dan, because I couldn't find a lot of Pikiti people back then there. Some of LeMaco was starting up or had been there.
Right.
And when I say starting up, it was you're starting to see the internet. So then you start to find these people. Once again, still doing the phone book.
Right.
There was some people that were Professor V, but I went there and they were like, you know, I didn't know my schedule. So they're like, you have to sign up for so long. I'm like, I'm coming back to this, but I can't do it right now. So they were like, well, I like Pikiti Tersha. And I think they were kind of like screwing with me a little bit. They were like, I'd like to spar a lot and I'm into Pikiti Tersha. And they like, we'll go to the Dog Brothers, like that. And I'm like, okay. And I kind of didn't know what I was in for. And that's how I got into it. I met, because I knew about all the guys, Eric Knaus, Arlen, and Mark. But I ended up training with Mark, Guru Crafty Dog, Denny. And he was really instrumental in getting me ready to fight, basically, because there was a lot of things that I didn't know about adrenaline. Like, I did from sports, and we used to beat each other up and kickbox and punch each other. We got the boxing gloves out and all that stuff when we were kids and stuff. But like really being scared and being a stranger that really wants to take your head off, I would freeze a lot in the beginning. and not have solutions to things. And that was a real awakening, especially at that time. And also they were using a lot bigger sticks too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So
some of those videos. This is fascinating, and it's kind of like right in line with just, you know, Jen and I are always talking about instructors and peak performance and stuff. And what were some of the strategies to help break a natural fear like that?
yeah. Well, general cardio is the safest start, just being in really good condition. But experience is really the best thing, because people talk about the adrenaline dump. Like, that may or may not happen no matter what. So either just accepting it and moving on, or knowing that there's a lot more to this fight, and staying fluid, really. And it's a mindset. So like experience, like at first you're like, this stick, when it hits, it's going to kill me. I'm sure my finger's going to break when this hits my hand. You know, everybody does hand hitting, which is a great drill. But a lot of times your hand breaks and it actually seizes around the stick. So it doesn't go flying out of your hand.
Wow.
It just seizes on it more. So you can fight the whole fight with a stick in your hand, with a broken hand. And then you're like prying it, you're practically prying the hand off the stick, you know? So like, there was a little bit of myth, and everyone has their story. Well, one time I did this, you know, got hit the guy in the hand and he stopped. And that is awesome when that happens, but you can't count on it. That's really the thing. You just have to keep going, right? So experience, I think, just keep doing it and putting yourself in things that are uncomfortable. Like, if you know it's uncomfortable, you're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It sounds like
Okay.
we love the topic.
Yeah.
It sounds like there was a lot of processing, communication, conversation about fights in that environment. Would you say?
Like, what do you mean exactly? Just
So for example, if you identified that, you know, adrenaline and being hesitant in the fight, and now it sounded like you were not only getting the exposure and the experience of having more bouts, but you also were talking and processing about the experience of the fight, of pushing past being hesitant. Was that the case or no?
Yeah, and also it's very much the case, and it sort of transcends martial arts, and I guess you would call it a warrior mentality, but a lot of times societally we're told not to hit. Like, as a kid, you're totally told not to hit. And I hear these stories when I tell people to take a stick and swing it at a person full force where you actually could hurt them is luckily not natural, you know, unless it's just blind rage. But to do it as a thinking person is not natural, which means humans might be actually good by nature. But you have to distill that out of your system, which means you have to have a good training partner or a good training team or an environment where it's acceptable. So Dog Brothers was really good because they had said, we're part of a tribe or a team that's trying to push each other to be warriors together and fight together. Yeah. So, you know, this is Guru Crafty. Like, this is his wisdom, is to push them as hard as you can without breaking them, because then they're no good to you. I mean, this is a quote from him, and you're right. Like, if you know, they would say, beat them up early when they first come to class, and then they'll always be scared of you. Like, that's funny, but it's not the best way to be. And if you're easy on them, and I hear this all the time, like, you know, I watched the fight and somebody was going easy on them, right? And they weren't taking shots, and they're trying to get it out of them. And then they'll put on the internet, oh, those Dog Brothers aren't anything. And I'm like, dude, you don't know the beating that you missed. And it is about pushing people hard, but you don't want to break them. So, and that's what I'm talking about in the adrenal environment, is have the sense of being and mentality to not take the shot when maybe their mask fell off, or something, they kind of stumble and they're not, that they've been hit real hard, and not to take them out then, but to know that you need to push them. Like, a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions, like when they drop their weapon, like, "Oh, sir, please pick up your weapon and we will fight again." And like, no, that's the best time to hit them. I promise you, when they drop their weapon, and those are real things that you have to learn.
Yeah.
Just because I promise you, someone on the street isn't gonna be so polite.
Right. And I've always kind of like wondered about that, because I do remember seeing this interview with Mark Denny, who you just brought up, and he pretty much started the interview kind of talking about the Dog Brothers, like, this isn't a sport. This is about knowing, and knowing in your heart, in that situation, where you stand. That's the natural order of our life anyway. Do you know? And I always wonder, like, without the intention to harm, in the sense that someone who has like purely negative intentions, without like that added part of it, do you still feel that challenge when you're like, but then you're thinking, wait, we're fighting with weapons. This is not always an empty hand thing. So I'm sure that it still is something that is, controlled, but really invaluable pressure testing, even though there isn't that true intention, like, I want to take your money or I want to kidnap, it's not, it's not the same, but I think that's as close as you're going to get,
Yeah, I mean, it is, you always heard those stories of the martial artists back in the day. I always wanted to go get in a fight, or just, the stories, and left a dollar bill in my pocket and waited for someone to grab it or something. And like, do we really want that? But, it's a very tribal experience, and it's very spiritual. Whatever that is, it's some of the best times I've ever had on this planet, honestly.
Right.
Salute to the whole Dog Brothers,
Yes.
that movement and their role in martial arts,
Absolutely.
training in history, and bringing that edge. I don't think it's a coincidence. We had a lot of guests on the show that are part of the Dog Brothers. Yourself,
Absolutely.
Tuhon, Phil, Mandala, Jason, and Lamont, and I think that they, just that whole, like, I'm calling it a movement, has done a lot for PTK and martial arts by just bringing that edge and actually exploring what's real, what's not real, and most importantly, that spiritual side, where who are you? How can I discover in a somewhat safe environment, put myself through this experience and see what comes out on the other side?
Absolutely.
And part of being a warrior was a lot of rites of passage. And we have ranking tests, but really, and I think in ancient times, those were rites of passage where you came out of that a stronger warrior. And I think from what I see and hear, the Dog Brothers is like a rites of passage type experience. So I know I'm preaching to the choir right now.
Well,
as a non-Dog Brother, I just want to say that's the impact that they have.
Yeah, I think, now that I get older, rites of passage are important, and ceremony is important. And I'm not a ceremony guy. Like, if I ever got married, it would be like, at a barbecue joint, or whatever. Like, I'm just saying, like, I'm not a ceremony person, but it's important. Like, every other culture in the world has a returning warrior ceremony of some variety. And, when you talk about America, they don't always appreciate their warriors. And I'm talking and I'm not talking about Nick as a karate black belt or whatever. Like, I'm talking like a real warrior that's had 3, tours in Afghanistan, or whatever. Like, coming home is kind of like, okay, cool. Now the drains need swept in the house, and the wife unfortunately couldn't lift these boxes. So that's your next. You were in Afghanistan 24 hours before, 1 week ago, and now you're back, and so now we gotta, do the bushes, and it's like, And it's not, because there's a whole thing with like what the person at home has to deal with. So I'm not belittling them, but you know, most cultures take their young men and they listen to the horrors of that war and they forgive them and they take them through a process, you know, like, you know, you see those guys like the Native Americans meet their people at the, you know, at the baggage claim, and they have they're already starting that ceremony. Like,
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't think a lesser degree, but Dog Brothers is a ceremony. Like, it's a sacred space. I mean, I was joking with that. We did the parable of the cherry, that one for, it's a documentary. And I was telling her, yeah, this is our safe space, you know, like this is our safe space. I mean, it's funny, but it's sacred to us. And you're going to hear all kinds of people. You can hear people say all kinds of things about it, but it's usually because they don't want to show up. Even if you come and watch, I mean, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a very welcoming community. So like, usually if you hear somebody pick on it, it's not from a good place, because criticism is you know, can always use some good criticism. Like, it's not
back.
Yeah. So I don't know, that might have got a little off rail, but
No, we're on rails. You know, thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you.
Honor, but
that commentary that you shared is deep, and I don't want to overlook that. We have to honor our warriors that come home. You know, indeed. When it comes to women in sparring, do you see that often? Are there dog sisters out there?
Yeah, there are, absolutely. Yeah, one of my very close friends, Linda Matsumi, was, I think, kind of a trailblazer. Her dog brother's name is Self-Picked Bitch. So Linda Bitch Matsumi, she picked the name for herself. But she was a big trailblazer, I think. In the Dog Brothers, she was one of the first. And then in Europe, they have quite a few. I'd like to see more, but I think it's very healthy in the community right now.
Yeah. Sir, I want to get to some of the comments, if you don't mind. They've actually been rolling as we've been talking. We love the community interaction. That's part of the ripple effect. Just going back a little bit, Dr. Brian Stoops said there is a reason that the KIL gear is used by so many amazing Kali practitioners. So we're saluting on that plug. I'm rolling through the comments, sir.
I'll tell you a Dr. Stoops story. So me and him have fought quite a few times. And in one fight, I thought I got the best of him and I had him in side control. And so I'm pretty heavy. I can make myself heavy. So I thought I had him, but then he drew a knife, which is not only not illegal, it's quite encouraged. But he was just coming over the top, stabbing me. And so I tried to grab for his hand, but it just moves too fast, right? Because it's the fastest moving thing on your arm. I basically died.
Yeah.
But then I realized, oh, you just start at the shoulder and go to the hand. It works every time.
It follows the line.
Yeah, and it moves a lot slower here than here. And so I learned that from Brian Stoops.
You see, that's where a metaphoric death can lead. Could lead to life somehow in the future.
That's it.
Paolo Rubio has tuned in. Salute Paolo once again for supporting on the show, my brother. He said he filmed a bit of yet to be released content with Tuhon Nick in LA, and he's only now beginning to understand the material. He didn't understand just how much was in there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
so we're looking forward to seeing that, Paolo.
I was wondering if I had like said something stupid or something. So
No.
Oh man, probably not, sir.
No,
And
no.
Morgan from Citadel Combat Arena said, "Greetings, Pappy Dog," and woof woof. And again, Paolo and Nomad, there's just a lot of commentary about your presence, sir, just being laid back, you know, admirable, very confident, and you back it up with your history and experience. Jade Agalon Jade said that she and her kids train on Monday nights with you at Valley Martial Arts on Saturday mornings. You're a great teacher.
Yeah,
friend.
we have a
That's awesome.
Stella. Shout out to Stella.
Yeah. So when you're teaching the kids, Tuhon, when you're teaching the kids, how does that look? Are you following adult-like programs, or what is that?
That's rough. You know, luckily Jade's kids are part of that culture, and they're also extremely smart. So, and they hang out with adults like in a very fun, positive way. So it's very easy to teach them. I prefer. I have friends that teach children's karate, and they are very, very good at it. I usually just treat them like small adults, and if they can hang, they can hang. I mean, that's just, it's a real skill. Teaching in general is a real skill, but
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Almost there, sir. I just want to, we always got to honor our viewers. Doug Parent. Doug Parent is in the house. He's in the house. Great interview. Good to see you. Check out your movie, he says, not just about Kali, but also Perfect Slice of Life in the PI. Doug, we are going to talk about that film. We're getting to it, my friend. And Citadel Combat Arena. There's a lot. Kyle Christian is tuned in. He's from New York as well. All right. I want to get to this question here. Where did it go? Where did it go? No, sir. Oh, it was about what was your favorite odd improvised weapon set that you have seen fought or have fought in the tribal gathering?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, this isn't improvised, but I'll try to touch on a couple. I was actually really happy when the 3-section staff came back.
Wow.
Not improvised, obviously. It's a legit weapon. That was my Jocko Willink impression. But yeah, 3-section staff as a fighting weapon, I thought was a lot of fun. But improvised weapons, a lot of people are doing stuff with sarong and stuffing a softball in it. Like, I guess that's kind of the, you know, putting a rock in your sarong, that kind of stuff has been fun. My friends fought with frying pans.
Whoa.
David and Joe Nepo. But real improvised weapons, I think really just goes to the flexible side, like a lot of fighting with chains and hoses and things like that has been fun. Has really made me a big believer in the stick, like all that stuff. Like, I'm a big kung fu guy, you know, like movies, and I like all that shit, but a stick is just like, to me, it's the ultimate revolution. Like, it's a stick. It's like, what's his name, that comedian? Like, when our day we had a stick, we played with a stick, you know, like,
Chris
what's
Rock.
his name?
Feels Chris Rock, maybe.
Awesome guy, but comedian, but no, what's the guy? Not Lenny Bruce, but after him, the grizzled guy.
Somebody stole that joke.
I'm embarrassed. We'll get it. Somebody will put it on the thing. But yeah, a stick. I mean, it's not you know, we all like nunchucks when we were kids, but it's a stick, man.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to just still on the Dog Brothers topic, and I want to, because I'm asking about the women for a reason. When it comes to the training for the women for sparring, preparing them for the fight, same as the men, or do you find you're making adjustments?
Well, that's an interesting point. That's a good point. I ultimately, no, not at all. I mean, this is a funny thing, just the statement. This was a female documentary filmmaker that I know. She did a documentary way back before the UFC and all that. about female boxing. And her quote was, I just thought it was so interesting. Men get aggression out and women take aggression in. And it's just a very interesting point. Like, and I've seen it happen a couple of times, but I think it's all ultimately, but at the end of a fight, guys are kind of like, dude, let's get a beer. Sorry. And sometimes when you see women fight, when they're done, they're actually madder.
Yep.
Have you ever noticed that? Is it?
It's true.
Jen is confirming.
It was just an interesting thing. But when it comes to training, no, I think it's pretty much the same. Like, you know, really it is the same, I think. Sometimes, unfortunately, size is a factor. Just whether it's a smaller guy and a bigger guy. Sometimes with a female, they're smaller. One of the big things is if they're, you know, a lot of times if you're really going hardcore, you kind of want it to be a female and a male, a female and a female fighting. But it goes back to good training partners. I don't think it's really even a gender thing. It's just good training partners. If that person's not up for it, you just have to turn the temperature just a little bit above them, no matter what, and not let them off too easy just to push them, right? If you overwhelm them, what good are they to you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man, thank you.
Yeah. You know, and
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic. Like, it shouldn't really, I don't know.
right.
Yeah, Jade, I mean, well, Jade, she kicks my butt. We just go at it.
Mm.
You know, like with her, no different.
We find the same.
Yeah.
I just was curious to just get some more insight.
Yeah. I teach a women's self-defense class. It's a monthly class called Kali and Tea, where we like train Kali and we drink tea after. It's for mothers who don't get a chance to train and they can bring their children, and we have childcare there. And so when I teach the women, I tell them that, actually, it's important to be able to handle the aggression of the male counterpart, because they're actually going to be more confident and more willing to try and have actually a little more power. Because if they're matching someone who's their power, there's a level of nervousness that you'll feel when you feel like you're outmatched that will affect your fine motor movements and power level.
Yes.
And so they actually will be more powerful and more confident. So I do believe that it's important to be as realistic in that situation. However, I do agree that, you have to think about, like any match, especially any sparring match that involves weapons, what your life is going to be like, should you be harmed or injured. And, I think that that's probably why it's so hard for women to train weapons-based martial systems. However, I do think if we're talking about realistic, it doesn't get more realistic than that. So
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the difference. Like if I was talking about Dog Brothers training somebody as a fighter or whatever, it's just, you just have to like raise the level slowly. With like sort of traditional Kali classes, it's all the same. Like usually I don't know, it's such a dumb generalization. Women are usually more coordinated and they have a dance background, and for the coordination stuff, they usually destroy the guys. And then for self-defense, the biggest thing is like, honestly, it's, if you really want to learn self-defense, you have to have a gross, sweaty guy on top of you, and you have to figure out how to get up from that. And that's, some people aren't, anybody, man or woman's not always willing to do that. Now we've got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's like killer, like female teams of black belts that are, well, that's been forever. That's such an old thing, but it's such a, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like made that just, it used to be so odd to be like, okay, now I'm going to get on top of you, like
Right.
sweat on you, but now it's no big deal. But
No big deal.
Mm.
Paulo clarified that he was giving the material time. He was absorbing the material.
Right on. I
earlier.
appreciate that. I watch everything he does, so I'm a big fan.
It's amazing. It was George Carlin, by the way.
George Carlin, duh. I'm such an idiot.
Yeah, how do we?
And where was I? What was I thinking? I
Yeah.
dropped a name that was totally off. Oh my God! And so I remember George Carlin saying that too. So That's there. And
That must have been Jason Nardi who said it was George Carlin. He would be the guy that would know that.
There's like a couple of people who've responded.
Yeah.
Jason's not one of them, by the way. And Tuhon Belton Lubas is in the house. Salute, brother. Good to see you here as well, man. That's awesome. All right, so we're jumping around a lot of topics. So we have a question from colleague Doug, and it's kind of tied into what we wanted to talk about, which is your film, Kali Means to Scrape. And I definitely I want to hear about your journey into that film. But if you have not seen this film, to the viewers, Kali Means to Scrape, number one, you need to see it immediately. And number two, I just can't understate how important that film was, at least to me at that time. Pre-internet, pre-Facebook. You actually now, I've been training with AK, you're hearing about Kali, but you want to see it and you want to see more of it. And this was a film, just honoring it before we talk about it, sir, that at least for me, when I saw it, it was like, I needed to see it. This was everything I wanted to see. It talked about the Philippines, it talked about FMA, and then when GT and Ramel are on the screen, it just, where it went with PTK, we're gonna talk all about it. So viewers, if you haven't seen Kali Means to Scrape, you need to see it. How did this project come about, sir?
Well, I will first tell you that I don't think I'm bragging, but I'll brag. I think a lot of movies or documentaries were spawned after it, maybe to be like, and I think it might even be like, well, my island needs a documentary too. And because that was basically a love letter to Negros Occidental. And then several came after, and I like them all. And I'm glad that they, you know, whether it's timeline or people were doing it, but that's the good stuff, right? Like that this art needs to be documented, because you know, most of the guys in the documentary are dead.
Wow.
And so that's a, you know, a time capsule. And so when I hear that they do one in Cebu, you know, that's the way it should be, you know, that's important. So how it started, I think this is pretty funny, actually. This girl at a party told me she was a psychic, and I was like, well, I want to go back to Greece, and I might do the World War II guys, or I'm going to go to the Philippines. And she goes, you must do your culture, the Greeks and all this stuff. So I did the Filipinos. So, you know, GrandTuhon invited me to the island, and I'm like, can I bring my cameras? And here's the other part. I could have shot the whole thing on a phone today, and it would have looked better. But I had a Canon, and I had this ginormous tripod like you would have in a TV station, like in 1984. Like it was like, you know, 5 feet wide and about this, you know, the tube. And I carried that through the jungle and all this stuff. And, you know, I'll just tell you a funny story. Like for me, it was just a big awakening, cultural awakening. Like I would be sneaking through the jungle with, you know, GrandTuhon, and we're like, oh, there's a bat, and there's a, you know, he says, like, you know how he is, like a cobra's in that hole for sure, and, you know, and some exotic bird, and then your cell phone would ring, and you'd be like, hello? It'd be like your mom, like, are you alive in the Philippines? It's so dangerous there, like, and I'm like, yeah, like better reception than I get in America, like, yeah, I'm good, Mom. Yeah, we're at the hotel. You know, you don't want to tell her you're traversing a river or something. Like, all right, see ya. My mom, who to this day, well, she passed, but still calls it karate. You doing that karate practice today? You know, the Southern accent.
My mom is the same way, man. It must be a mom thing, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Power to your mom, by the way.
Yeah, she was a big supporter. But yeah, I don't know, where were we?
Well, GrandTuhon invited you to the island. You brought your cameras. How did you get access to all these other masters?
Yeah.
Well, they were doing mind, body, and kick-ass moves. If y'all have seen that one on the old Facebook or the YouTube.
That's right.
And that was going on at the same time. So that got shot first. And I would like to say I found all the locations and I even paid for it. And I'll tell you about that. But I found the river where him and Ramel are fighting. And I found the Ballarta tree.
Wow.
They were
knew
going to
it.
do it on the tennis court, you know? And I'm like, you can't shoot on a tennis court. Like,
This is,
So-
I don't even mean to interrupt. I'm kind of like having a nostalgia here. I remember Mind Body Kick-Ass Moves.
yeah,
I remember GT on the river. And then
Yeah.
I remember seeing Kali Means to Scrape. And I was like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
almost looks very similar to, and I had always wondered, did someone get stock footage from somebody else? And now you've kind of cleared that up. So they were there
Yeah.
at the same
So I
time.
didn't feel bad about using it again.
No.
No, it was like a Roger Corman thing. We were like having production value, trying to save money. No, I'm kidding. But it was, yeah, I mean, there is some overlap for sure. It was at the same time. And, but the masters, it was Jeffrey Montalbano and GrandTuhon gave me access to those people. Jeffrey really was like people kind of give, sometimes I hear people think he's a little rough on the old guys or, you know, disrespectful, but I don't think that's it at all. I think they were his friends basically. And so, you know, like he's straightening one guy's hat and stuff,
Yeah.
but he was showing off his island. Like he was proud to like show off Negros Occidental. Like he was a fan just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And the same with, you know, GrandTuhon. Like he, as much as he's, you know, talks about Pikiti Tersha as like, this is the best and, you know, all that stuff. He does love the other arts. I mean, and he's proud of his islands and his country and his art and indigenous culture. Like, and that's what that movie is. Like,
Yeah.
those guys aren't bikini guys. I mean, you know,
That's right.
Right.
That was the that was like that was one of the things we just loved about it. I loved about it,
Right.
Genocide, the old masters being honored, everyone telling their story, and it being diverse, it not just being about Pikiti. Although I will say, I love watching it. I'm watching the show. You know, you're like narrating it. You give the history. You're talking with these FMA masters. I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. When Bikiti does appear on the screen,
It's amazing.
you know, to me, GT just jumps out at you like a lion.
Right.
yeah,
His presence, of course, I'm biased. Obviously, I'm a Bikiti guy, but it was just, it was awesome to see him in that and his power and his strength, and you know, it was remarkable for me to see you film that, man. And I was
well,
able to see it.
yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, no matter what, infamous or famous, he is a star. Like you put a camera on him, he's going to give you something to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people, some people claim, we were talking about it, I think. Yeah, some people clam up when they turn the camera on
Right.
them. And I mean, if you look at it, every single thing he ever has done, he's not repeating himself. I mean, we all know the speech about 300 years, you know, the Spanish, the Japanese, you know, like threw them out, the Americans, you know, like we know those stories. But the guy got a carabao to wrestle for one of the shows. He's tossing spears through a rice paddy. Like, that's production value, dude. Like,
Yeah.
that's a film. You're like, you want that, you know, like chicken blood, like everything. I mean, poisonous spiders in his
Yeah.
hand, like all of it. Like,
He's it.
Yeah.
that's what you want. Man, I love that one where he has the bat
Yeah.
that he named Tuhon. He's got on his arm. Like,
It's just
it's a
hanging out.
bat. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's when you just talk about like turning a camera on and seeing something. Like in Surviving Edge Weapons, they go, so can you throw that ball of song? And he's like, yeah, I can throw the ball of song and make it, you know,
Yes.
they weren't just saying, he had been practicing all day. He goes, okay, we'll put the camera on. and he threw it and stuck 2 or 3, I think. I mean,
He's the
you
real.
know, it's go time, you know, like when the drummer starts playing, you can't not play, like,
Yeah.
you know, when they count you in, you got to go. And that's one of the things that, like, you can talk about arts and systems and all that, but like that person can highlight his art, like he can and showing it off, and like you don't even know, like, and there is a component of flash to Filipino, like the Spaniard side and the regal, like highlighting and showing it off, like people like him, Danny Nosanto, like Illustrissimo, like
Yeah.
those guys are big deal. Like if I was like, man, I really think you should start playing guitar, and I play some crappy thing, or if I pull off some Eddie Van Halen or some Jimi Hendrix thing, you're gonna be like, yeah, I want to play guitar. Like,
That's right.
I'm just, these are just facts. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's when you see a master of their craft, it's almost like regardless of the craft, when you're in the presence of mastery,
yeah,
it has a profound effect. And some mastery inspires you to pursue that particular thing. And some, you know, I think for me, as I want to master myself in this particular combat system, I just appreciate mastery in other fields. And
absolutely,
people working their craft.
Yeah.
And I'm just hearing what you're saying, when it was time to film and really represent the art, the GrandTuhon, he was always spot on in representing and demonstrating clearly and articulately what message he wanted. And that's great.
yeah. Tuhon Leslie Buck always tells these stories. I'm gonna cop his story. So, like, he's never rehearsed for a demo with Leo Gaje. Like, I'm sorry I say that. I mean, it's GrandTuhon, obviously, but just like, you know, like I know him as a instructor, as a person, and then like a guy in the magazine. So I'm like, that guy Leo Gaje. But like, they never rehearsed, and like he would be like, we're at the mall, okay, we're gonna do a demo right now, and that's kind of like part of the preparation for combat, I think, is or being attacked. Like there's no time to prepare.
Yeah. Kali Doug wanted to add Jose Aguilar was the highlight of that film for him.
I could see why. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so many not mistakes, but just like I could have spent the whole time with him. Why didn't I follow him around? Like, we were on a, you know, like there's so many things. Like, we spent like 3 days, what GrandTuhon called climatizing. Like, I was like, okay, 8 o'clock, we got to have a production meeting and we got to go out and do this stuff and we got to save light. And he's like, no, we're going to get used to the temperature, you know, like eat and, you know, swim and train a little, you know. And but I was like, it was like, you don't just come to somebody's island and say, show me everything you got,
right,
and then leave with it. Like,
right,
you have to like
yeah,
talk with them and see what they're about, and they need to know what you're doing. And like,
yeah,
Jose Aguilar, just to go back to it, Jose Aguilar is pretty amazing. Yeah. Widow de Cabarata. I'm going to tell you, I misspelled widow. I think it's correct phonetically, but there was no mention of it anywhere on the internet when I did that film. We scoured, which, you know, we were going, you know, people are always like, you know, I did go someplace to get something and bring it back to a lot of people that hadn't seen it. You know, obviously these people that were there were like, yeah, it's always been here. You know, you always hear about people, you know, going to these foreign countries and we discovered this, and they're like, no, we've been doing it. But I wanted to bring it to people because I think it's special. And he's one of the guys, and Widow de Cabarata is an amazing system. And they're all, you know, they're very tied together, all the systems of Negros Occidental. Alicio Constantino, what a personality that guy had. And
Mhm.
I wish I could spend more time with him,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you for that film.
Yeah.
Paolo asked, where can we legitimately support the digital copy of this film?
In which respect? Like,
I think if somebody wanted to buy
So
it
like download
and
it.
download it.
Yeah.
I probably should have a download. I just have a closet full of old DVDs, but bloodsport.com, I could put it somewhere. I got to figure out where to put it as a download.
I don't know if I've seen it on Amazon. I don't know if this is through you or your company or some kind of litigation needs to happen, but
Valley
I
Martial
seen it on-
Arts had it. My friends that I work with, so he had it on there for a while.
Mhm.
That was one place you could have it. I have it. I should put a digital download somewhere. We can talk about that. Reach out
yeah,
to me.
we
I don't
would
know.
love to talk about it. Because I'm trying to find scenes for it on YouTube. And I was like, I just got to buy it. But in a similar thing, I'm like, wait.
I usually find them from other people. They're always posting like the scenes from it. I'm like, it's cool though. I mean, at some point, it's everybody's, honestly.
You're so humble, brother. Are there any other films that you're working on or have done related to Kali?
Yeah, I got a couple of things that I neglect to talk about them because they're not in any way or fashion to being finished. So I like to finish everything that I talk about. Some short form things. I don't think people have the attention span for longer form anymore. I will say that we're doing a horror flick that has a lot of Kali in it. That hopefully we can get out. We just finished a proof of concept for it. Female lead, fighting, has a lot of Japanese traditional martial arts and a lot of Kali in it.
Okay.
It's kind of a dark comedy, kind of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
We're looking out for it.
That's gonna be good. My friend Doug Hawley wrote it, and we choreographed all the fights and stuff. So,
all right,
that is a good one. That will be a good one. But yeah, I'll post some stuff about that. But
sir, that would be great. How did Kombat Instruments? We've mentioned it a few times. It's come up in the chat room. Could you tell us about this? People ask, where can I get sticks? How can I get sticks? And I'm usually directing them to Kombat Instruments or Kali Gear.
Yeah, well, Leslie's company's great. Also, I love his bags and his Ganuntings, and his training Ganuntings are amazing. And his Karumbits. But like I said, I cut my mom's broomsticks up from the beginning. And I tried to burn sticks using closet poles, and that just does not work, in high school. And then I met Ricky, and Ricky was the guy that made the sticks for the class. You'd get the box of sticks and everybody'd go through them and find the best ones. And there'd be like two missized sticks at the end. And you're like, oh man, you should have come to class Tuesday, and so you have two, but so no one gave me how to do it. I had to figure it out myself, and I came up with my own little method, and I think it's pretty good. And but I just wanted to have, everyone comes back with their batch of gear that they brought back from the Philippines, or when they went to their wife's family's place or husband's place in, the Philippines. Like, that's kind of a story that happens, but I just wanted a consistent place to get gear. And ultimately sticks was the thing. Like, I make gloves, and I like designing stuff. Everything from shirts to gear, and trying to make it a little bit better, bags. But I just wanted a place where people could always have it.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to make their one pair of sticks. Dude, I did it. Me and my friend sat in the garage, drank a beer, and did it. And that's fun, but it gets old quick. And I obsess about it so you don't have to, is basically how that works.
Okay, I'm new to the process. How would one make their own sticks?
Honestly, I'm not being too coy about it, but people only pointed me that way. So basically it's some version of heat. Like people say, throw them in your swimming pool for a week and then you bring them out and they get heavy and all this like crazy stuff, and take a torch and put a fork and burn the fork design on it, or wrap it in aluminum foil and burn your whatever. And that stuff's all aesthetic, but you really have to start with a great piece of rattan. And I've kind of searched the world for the best rattan. So that's one thing. And then straightening them is literally, there is no secret. You heat them up or steam them and you bend them over your leg till they're straight. The trouble is usually when you try to straighten it one way, it makes it crooked the other way. So it's really, that is one of those mastery things where you have to do it 1,000 times, because you screw up it. You screw more sticks up in the beginning than you do.
Yeah.
Like literally cutting a stick and just going, this is my stick, is almost better if you don't know how to do it. Do you know what I mean?
I got you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's, and I just want to highlight, you not only have a company, but you make the weapons as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
I used to call them explode on contact sticks. That's what a lot of things that were in the magazines, that like with all the cool designs and the silver tape around the ends, like you literally hit them and they burst into little pieces. And that's what I wanted to avoid. And then there was people talk about measuring sticks.
Mm-hmm.
It's really your personal preference. Like, it's good that it's measured off your body. Like, that is a good thing because it's based on your size. And that's right. That's correct. But ultimately, it's what you want. Like, everybody likes a thin pair of sticks because you look really cool spinning them around fast, but you're not getting the full value out of it. So, like my Texas friends say, well, I'm a Texan, but you don't have to own just one gun. You don't have to own just one pair of sticks, like have a couple different kinds.
Yep. Yep.
Your demo sticks,
Yep.
And
they're made to break. You get some students, they buy their first pair, they never want their sticks to break. The sticks break, they're like emotional over it. And it's like,
I know, right?
It's like they're meant to break. That's the idea.
And they're not really meant to put on the wall for artwork. They're meant to be used. I mean, it's cool once they break, you put them on the wall. And that was my first pair of sticks. All that stuff's cool. But yeah, I do find though, a couple people have come, they're like, this is my gathering pair and I haven't broke them yet. And I love them. And you get kind of attached to them.
Right.
But I think my sticks last longer. That's just me. Some sticks are not made equal though.
Right. Now this might be like a dumb question, but
there are no dumb questions.
You're right. But do you know if the stick will be like, do you make the stick to, like you're saying, I'm going to make this to be heavy, or is it based on the wood? Is it, or like what kind of rattan you get?
I would say it's based on the wood. There's little things you can do, soak them for a while to make them heavier. Some people used to soak them in salt water, seawater, and then this water evaporates, and that supposedly makes them heavier. But a good stick is a good stick to start off with. I mean, that's just the way it goes.
Folks, you need some sticks. Kombat Instruments Limited, Bloodsport. Go out there and get them made from the dog brother himself, Pappy Dog. Tuhon Nick, there was a couple of questions and comments that as we were talking, we just weren't able to get to it. Morgan had asked, most painful dog brother clinch maneuver?
Clinch maneuver, yeah, that's a good question, actually. Most painful? I mean, I'm just gonna, it's really a fang choke is basically the most painful. And you can do it from different clinch positions, and you can do it on really any part of the body, and you can get enough pain that they might tap or at least squirm the other way and you can get the advantage. But usually if you either do it right to there or into behind the collarbone, you can usually get the most pain.
Wow. Okay. He said outside of the camel toe takedown. Can you just, is that describable?
Yeah, it's basically, just imagine like you're in some sort of clinch and you take the stick and you put it between their legs,
Oh, I've seen that.
and then you lift them up off the ground.
And he slam them. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. Oh yeah, that's gotta hurt too.
Not a politically correct title, but
Uh,
you won't forget it.
okay, all right. No, okay, man, I'm getting old. You know what? That just I just got it. Pardon me, folks. Tuhon Belton was making some really good commentary about the role of women in the class, and about not focusing as much on power or overpowering through strength, and that allows them to develop skill sets. Essentially, I
That's
kind
a
of
good point.
paraphrased his point there. He also said your stash is on point, man.
Yeah.
That's badass right there. I happen to agree. Citadel, what are some film? Have you done stunt work on some films?
Yes, I have. But primarily, the only one to speak of that's kind of super cool is I don't know if y'all know this actor, Bren Foster. This Australian guy. He was in Fight Science. He's the real handsome, really, really good looking Australian guy. He's a buddy of mine, and Greek guy as well. But his character, Wolf, is an SAS guy, and in season 5 of The Last Ship, he decimates these 5 guys, and these are these great stuntmen. But we worked out the fight scene for it, so that was pretty cool. And there's a bayonet scene we worked on together. But Bren's such a colossal martial artist that to say that I was just lucky to work with him, but we trained together and stuff. He's an amazing kicker, and he's also a big proponent of the Filipino martial arts. So how's that for name dropping? Just stunt work is just, I actually came up being an art director actually in the movie industry. So if you ever watch Dazed and Confused, you can see my work.
Okay.
And that was not art directing. That was my first art gig. But if you look at the lockers, that's me and the guys. And when they get out of school,
Yeah.
and the 76 on the spray paint on the locker, that was me.
Wow.
Man.
But yeah, on film stuff. There's some other stuff, but I can't pull it out right now. I can't think of anything. Oh, there was Hannibal, the true story of Hannibal. And then this one called Vacation Nightmares or something like that. There's a lot of History Channel stuff.
Yeah. No, Hannibal.
That's more my jam.
You know what? Actually, Jen and I too. We're actually watching Alone on the History Channel. Love
Yeah?
that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, did you see the one about the Jerusalem being sacked by the Ottoman Empire? It was on right at the beginning of COVID. It's spectacular.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was called, but
Man,
it was good.
that sounded almost like the title right there. This
I
is going to be offensive, but I'll check out Jerusalem Sacked. You know what I mean? I'm just going to check it by the Ottoman. I'm going to check out. I love the History Channel. I'm a big proponent of history and culture. You know, that's something that Jen and I, we love. We infuse it in our martial arts. You had a lot of culture in Kali Means to Scrape, and that was the way it was documented. Do you promote culture in your classes? Do you try to encourage your students to learn more about the culture?
I do. Unfortunately, I think one of my biggest downfalls is the language, that I don't know the language good enough. Because I think that's a big part of it, But I do, because, the culture for me is, we see katanas, and they're really all made very well, but very, not systematic, but they're very precise and exact. Whereas if you look at a lot of Filipino blades, apart from maybe the Chris and the Capelon or whatever, they're made from the things that they find. So each one's different. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So like, to me, that's kind of a cultural thing. It's like, it's from a piece of, you know, a truck spring we always hear. So it's, each one is individually because it's made from found material. And culturally, that's kind of more where I come from. It may be more anthropologic, maybe like those kind of things. Or like Erwin, Guru Erwin, Tuhon Erwin Ballarta used to tell us like that when they met Lapu met Ferdinand Magellan, you know, the reason the footwork is so dynamic is because they would sink in the sand. So they had to move their feet constantly, and the Spanish would sink. They had armor on and they were trying to get out of their like boats and get to the shore, and they were slower. And like, to me, that's the kind of culture that I think I feel a little bit more comfortable with, you know. And back to Kali means to scrape. I mean, a lot of those guys, they're educated and they're smart. Some aren't educated, but they are all smart and creative. And a lot of times the names of techniques and things come from things like, you know, mountain strikes and numbering systems that come out of the Bible, like the number of, you know, disciples or archangels. You know, we have the 5 main strikes and the Trinity and all those things. To me, that's the culture that I try to just share. And, you know, all the stories of the practicing on a full moon because it's hidden from, you know, the Spanish, or hiding it from the Spanish and things like that. And that's why you see moons and things in people's logos and things like that.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I guess I do teach culture. What the heck?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's like, that's important culture because
Yeah.
we often take for granted that, you know, this is a system that was actually battle tested. This is a family system that was used. And I think it's so important to honor and recognize that because there's so much martial science out there that is, you know, we don't assume where we assume that we know the origin, but we really don't know, like, who's the first person to ever do Kung Fu. Whereas this is back in the lineage of people, and this is used to protect the family, protect generations of a family. So I think that's a beautiful way to implement the history.
Preserve the culture.
You couldn't find it on the internet. So, you know, you weren't going to just teach anybody because they may rob your farm or something. So you had to really know that person.
That's right. Brother Morgan had made a comment. We were talking about the History Channel, and he's from Jerusalem. His ancestry is from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
He's trying to sack my town, man. Hope no offense there, my brother. You know, we always want to make sure about that. Paolo loved your philosophy about the film doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
It belongs to the people, and ultimately it all belongs to the future.
Did you just quote what's her name on that one?
Did
the
I?
Children are our future. Is that what you did?
Oh, dang. You know,
Houston.
man, if I did, pardon me, you know, but I love that. I love that concept. Really, I do.
Yeah.
And I agree with it too, that, you know, we're in constant service, and, you know, we do things for ourselves, but most important is what we do for others. And so I believe that's what Paolo was saying. Commenting on what you said about it doesn't belong to me. Kali means to scrape. So,
well, that one for sure. I mean, it's just. I mean, I really like when I did it. I wanted to. Yeah, it was, you know, there. Yeah, at the time, I just really wanted. I just really wanted to bring it to like the world. Like, to me, it was a very special thing. And I was like, and people didn't know. And, you know, it was coming out in movies, starting to come out in movies. And people were like, you know, oh, look at that Jason Bourne stuff. Might have been a little earlier than that. But, you know, there was exposure. Tarantino was starting to get a little bit into it. 300 came out later, but I'm trying to think of the other ones. That The Crow, for sure, that was already out. But then I'm like, you know what? There's some old cool motherfuckers, you know, like I said this on Paulo's video, like there's Jimmy Page and there's Jimi Hendrix, you know, and these guys have, there's already another generation, but you know, what about like Blind Boy Fuller and like fucking Mississippi John Hurt and like Django Reinhardt? Like there's those old bastards were bad ass, you know, they could shred too. And, you know, Alicio Constantino and, you know, Jose Aguilar, those dudes can shred, man. Like, and it did kind of go back to my Greek thing because, you know, my grandfather was a World War I guy, but that leaving the start of the Industrial Revolution, like when you look at pictures from that time, like my grandfather's from an island where everybody carries a knife, and you better have and you have a knife on your wedding day, like, and that's like a thing, and like you don't give the knife up for anything. Like some English guys like, oh Mike, can I trade it for this watch? I want that knife so pretty. He's like, what am I gonna do if somebody attacks me? Like I can't hit him with a watch. Like it's in their culture, like knife culture. And the point being is like, if you look at those pictures, like in Indonesia, they may have a suit on, but they also have a sarong on. Like it's that East-West sort of modern, old world, modern world thing that I really liked. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch. Like those old guys, like we talk about Dog Brothers, but those motherfuckers had hit somebody with a bolo. Like,
Yeah.
like they know what it's like to do that. And like, that's kind of like, for me, a little bit of my favorite. There's World War II and there was some stuff but if you go back, like they used to teach staff fighting in gym. Do you know you could get at Boy Scouts, you could get a jiu-jitsu badge? Like wrestling was one of your badges. Like all these things, like in gym in Greece, they taught staff.
Wow.
Like in the Philippines, like, you know, like you had a Arnis festival. Like that's what you did at festivals. In Hawaii, there was a full contact fight up until 1950. Like there's signs in in Hawaii that, you know, in newspapers that say, please no full contact fighting in the park. Like kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, or it's illegal to have duels, you know? So it's just that old world. And I wanted to catch those guys before they passed, at least so people would know that they were there. I'm kind of remembering this stuff, you know, now that y'all are talking about it, but those were my ideas. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're jogging the memory. Glad we're jogging the memory, sir. And man, thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, it's just called the warrior culture, what it sounds like you're talking about with your father. And in Hawaii, it's just warrior culture. I mean, I'm fascinated by it globally. Obviously, we're focused on the warrior culture here in the Philippines, but it's just preservation of culture is very, very important. And the warrior culture of all cultures is probably the most important parts of the culture.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, you know, you want to put it in real perspective, but you can pull the good parts too. Like you don't have to be, there were some bullies back then, you know what I mean? Like might made right and that kind of stuff. But there was I think a thing to better themselves and reach a higher, whatever it was. But, you know, every culture I think it's just interesting, quite honestly. Like I heard in Africa, it's considered cocky. Like back in 100 years ago, like it was considered, well, actually, no, 10 years ago, it's considered cocky to not have a walking cane.
To not have one.
Yeah, because what, you don't think you have to defend yourself or something? Like, that's probably more, I read that article probably 20 years ago, but so like in the 50s.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Tuhon, would you have any advice for newer students in Pakiti trying to figure this out, and two, new instructors trying to figure this thing out?
That's a good question. I mean, you know, Tuhon Erwin, Tuhon Leslie Buck. I mean, us, it was always about the mechanics, because ultimately we would do this. This was more than 800 times. We would be like, how do we do this drill again? You know, like me and a student, both being students, were training, met on a Saturday or something when there was no class, or Sunday. How did it go? And we're just like, go back to the mechanics. And we were like, wait a second. Yeah. Then you're like, I just made up that drill. And then they're like, no, that's the drill. But you remembered it. Like, the mechanics will always get you there. That's why he says, you know, don't stop, keep going, you know, like move, you know, like the mechanics are the motor that drives the system.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So if you can't think of anything else to do, sidestepping, reverse triangle, swinging, slash thrusts, like it always goes back to that. That's why people are doing this debate. Dosi methodos, try V, you know, all these things. And it's the mechanics. And then ultimately it's Grandtuon Leo Gaje. So then like, well, I'm, you know, not that guy. So, but the mechanics will get you there. You're going to find your way to do it though. You know, like you'll find your place in the art.
Yes, sir.
He also said to me once, he goes, pick a couple things to specialize in. It was great advice. I don't know if I took it, but you know, he's like, do C-bot and single stick. That'll, you know, let that be your thing or whatever.
Wow.
I think mine's probably, ultimately it's single stick, but I like double stick and Espadadaga.
Yeah. Wow.
But that was a good advice. I remember him saying that.
Yeah. There's just so much to train. It seems like you could only sometimes just focus on one aspect. You wonder, how did he even, he's so prodigious, you know, to know so much of the art. It's amazing.
I know. Well, I always pull these random things to explain it, but don't get in the way of the art. That's why the mechanics, like if you get the mechanics, you can do almost anything. You still takes practice and all that stuff, but the mechanics will save you every time. So yeah, don't get in the way of the art.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right.
Let it flow. What's that?
So where do you see the future of PTK going? And you know,
Oh, I don't want to be negative, but it could splinter. But I think if we keep an open to growing, like, you know, if we stay to those tenets, you know, I believe in health and, you know, all the positivity. I think we can, I think Jade's doing a great thing. I think Tuhon Jesse was a great bind conduit, because there is just a mechanical, like this y'all's would it be it's a podcast, right? Is it a YouTube?
It's like a live.
What is it?
It's a live stream.
Yeah, live stream.
Yeah.
Live stream. Yeah, y'all, like these things are good, like, because you have to just see what other people are doing. It's got to be, you know, respect. You know, they may not be doing the bikini that you know, but I tell you, he's taught a lot of people differently. So there's that aspect too. So, you know, you've got to respect people's take on it, because ultimately we can't be a cookie cutter of Grandtuon Leo Gaje. Like we're saying, he's, you know, he's a marvel, you know?
Yeah.
You have Jimi Hendrix, and you got kind of lucky with Stevie Ray Vaughan, getting somebody that's kind of got it, but there's not going to be too many more of those guys.
Wow.
You know, so, you know, Ramel, also Tuhon Ramel's been an influence. I know I'm forgetting people. I have so many, like my Dog Brothers training partners, my bikini training partners. You can't live in a vacuum, I guess. And a lot of other systems like Guru Dan Inosanto. My God, how can you not talk about his influence?
That's right. So the future, it could splinter, but if we're proactive, we can prevent that, hopefully.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, I'm just thinking of things in the past. I'm sure GrandTuhon will outlive most of us, so I'm not too worried about that. But like, you have to remember in the martial arts, you're the golden ring, and chances of becoming a millionaire with it is not great. So it's probably for like quality of life.
Yep.
So if you know that,
Yep.
it's probably going to be for essentially enjoyment,
Yep.
cultural, health,
Yep.
and just meeting cool people. Like,
Yeah.
like how many people have you seen, like you're training with some guy and you're like, or gal, and you're like, oh my God, you're a cop?
Right.
Huh, I'm a drug dealer, but we got that same thing. Oh, it's great. So, I remember in the karate days, it'd always be like that. Oh, you're a gym teacher? Yeah, I'm a musician, like
Right. It's
just
yes.
connecting on this cool thing.
Yes. Wow.
So, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that I'm listening, and I agree with you, sir. I think, honestly, the future is going to be bright for PTK. I think that there's hills and valleys for everything. And it's through sometimes difficulty that we emerge stronger out of the other end.
Yeah.
And I think that there was like there's unmistakably periods in PTK, and those that know, those that don't, it's not for you, but it's just there's dark periods of history there.
Absolutely.
And that time will heal. And like you said, if everyone has learned something different, I think it's a matter of putting the pieces together and connecting people together to kind of like share the vastness of it,
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic about that. I don't know why. It's just my sentiment.
I think quality control is important. Like, it doesn't mean like kick that person out or anything like that, but just quality, like meaning like it's a class that's in a park, it's a class that's in a school. It's like, yeah, they may not have this one bit of material, but they're having it's still good training and all those things. So an overall quality control and customer service, like, like return your calls when people want to check out Kitty Tersha. So I'm kind of kidding, but like when you talk about dark periods, think about, like, I always talk about this with musicians, like the career of like Johnny Cash. There were times when people didn't even remember who the heck Johnny Cash was. And then all of a sudden he has a revival.
That's right.
And now like rockabilly dudes that are 20 years old are playing his songs. Like, that's quality control. Like, through the board, you stay to your, stick to your guns, and it's going to come back around.
Yeah.
Because it's generational. Every 10 years, right?
That's right. That's right.
And like you said, mechanics, mechanics are the mechanics. They don't change. There's things that make the KT very effective and very much unique and in its own lane. And if we stick to the mechanics and we continue to grow with the mechanics, then it's hard to, not see the value and pay homage to what the system is all about. So
yeah,
I'm an optimist too.
Yeah.
I like it. I need to hang out with y'all more.
Well, I think that's just because we've been through some dark times individually in our journey, and we've seen death and hell, as I like to say, and we ain't going back. And so part of our personality and part of who we are is because we've seen the other side, and so that's why we have Jen and I have our own PTSD in our own way, growing up Bronx and in Philadelphia. But generally, I think those that understand and value life after going through tough experiences, you are more inclined to push for the positive.
Yeah.
And I think that because so many people, we were talking on one of the episodes, I think it was Collie Doug, that if you've been through struggle, you will understand this system. This system is for you. And just like you said, it brings different people together, but often the people that come together have, at least in our experience, they've all been through something.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that means our value and appreciation of life is elevated and on the same page. And if we just, like you said, focus on that, amazing things can happen in the future.
A friend of mine said, this is a music, but it counts for martial arts too, is music's the cheapest therapy in town. So maybe martial arts the cheapest therapy going. So
man, it's our marriage therapy, I'll tell you that.
Yes, it is.
You know, it's our counselor, and I learn every time, and I come back, sorry, yes, dear. You know,
I have a friend, they're married and they're both masters in Filipino martial arts, but there's a slight difference in their style. You kind of, the short term would be one's modern style and one's old style. And I just like, you've married this beautiful woman and you both are into martial arts, but there's still a little bit of competition. I'm just like, it's so funny how that goes like that.
Yeah,
that's old style. No, that's new style. Like
that's
awesome.
That's their spice, right?
Yeah, that's it.
You know, we're getting a lot of good comments and feedback, sir, in the commentary when you have time just to review just about a lot of our conversation. Eve Morgan is cracking a joke every time. This episode will be a drinking game. Every time you say like, someone's gonna have to take a drink. You know what I mean? And it's all in jest and it's all in love. It's been a really good time talking with you. So just a few more questions.
Sure.
We always ask, speaking of Morgan, EDC, regular carry, when you're out there in the streets, you know, what do you carry with you?
All right, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I had to stitch a special pair of pants for this. Here we go.
Whoa.
Juan Dao, bitch.
Hey.
Yeah. It's tough to get into. You can't really sit down with it, but yeah, that's my daily carry.
That's the EDC. What is the name of that? I've seen that.
Juan Dao, isn't that right?
Oh, okay.
Right.
Can you say that again?
Juan Dao, isn't
Juan
that
Dao. Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I carry, what I carry, honestly, this is a gift from a friend. This is actually pretty nice for me. GoldenEye, it's like the worst James Bond movie, but the coolest knife ever. Is that a Pierce Brosnan or the other guy, Dalton? Anybody? But no, I carry, what I carry is like the lowest end, like a bird Spyderco, because I lose them a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually open boxes and cut rope with them, so they can't be the nice ones.
Right.
Wow.
Just something that'll.
Fair enough, sir. Fair enough,
Yeah.
man. Any final thoughts, Tuhon, to share with us?
Golly, man, I just stoked that people like this stuff. Like, honestly, like, I'm not like totally OG or anything, like, but like, there was not a lot of people doing this martial art when I grew up, like, and still people are like, what's this thing, you know, like, oh, the stick fighting, it's the stick fighting thing, right? And like, I'm just happy that people are doing it, honestly. Like if I see somebody with a pair of sticks, it's like, you know, I just get a wink, you know, like that person's cool. Like, that's the way I think about it.
Yeah.
I think it's super important and it's very deep, but like, it is just, I'm continuously marveled that people like it as much as I do. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I wake up every morning, like I say, going 64 attacks. You know, I mean, golly, you know, I can't. I do know what you mean. And
like, I mean, how many times have you been eating and you're at the restaurant, and then you start going,
Yeah.
you know, like,
all day.
yeah.
Okay. You gotta love it, you know, and that's why we love this community. Is I have friends that I've known for years and family, but there's only so many people that I could actually talk about this with and just not seem crazy or out of line. That we can do this at the table with each other and totally understand. I think that what you said is kind of profound, sir, because you're part of the reason, you know, you're part of the reason. And the Tuhons of that generation, you said you started in 80, 81. You know, it was the work of those early pioneers to bleed, cry, sweat, put it all, travel thousands of miles, put hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment for something that nobody knew, nobody could even understand. You can't even articulate this probably, especially when it first came out. I mean, was around. But you guys put in that hard work. You made a film that also just spread the art exponentially. So thank you for your hard work, man.
Well, speaking of Kali Means a Scrape, Ron Gabriel was basically my partner to finish that film. And has a passion to promote and document the Filipino martial arts. So that is somebody that needs to be, you know, brought up. But
thank you.
You know, like, I mean, me, yeah, okay, I've done some things, but like, you know, if you think about like Grandtuon Leo Gaje, Mark Denny, Eric Canals, like,
yeah,
Daniel Santo, and you can even think like, you know, Grandtuon or Tuhon Erwin Ballarta. I'm trying to think of, like, they kind of like, you know, Erwin has he worked in law enforcement, so it was a nice combination. But a lot of people have sacrificed and not done other things and had other careers just to kind of push this art forward. And you can't really underestimate that. Like, you know, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. We definitely want to, we pay homage to those grandmasters.
Yeah.
Those pioneers, obviously, like that shovel that first tills the soil to break the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then they tilled that soil and then they planted seeds, you know, and then those seeds grew to be trees and grew fruit, you know. And so we pay homage to those grandmasters. I would love for every name you just mentioned to be on this show. I know they've all done their own interviews. But it's also about paying homage, like you said. We know about Hendrix.
Yeah, right.
And you got these other guys that could shred too, you know, and we want to pay homage to that part of our history in PTK that you're very much part of, sir. So thank you.
Yeah, and y'all are gonna have a great time with Jade, I know, because hopefully she'll unleash some stories.
Man.
Some of the things I've heard are
Agalon Jade, we are so looking forward to this interview. Her spirit is just honest and just it's just truth speaking. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving her some good words, hopefully to encourage that. So salute to Tuhon Nick also for helping us secure Agalon Jade. So everything else. But thank you, sir, for taking your time here once again.
Thank you.
It's been a lot for us.
I'll try to stop the likes. No, I'm kidding. No, that's like very Facebook, isn't it? To say like all the time.
Oh man,
there you go.
You know, it's actually just Brother Morgan being funny.
I love that though.
He's
No,
he's the regular on the show, so we're kind of used to his. He actually closed out by saying one of my favorite. Thank you so much for being you, Tuhon Nick. This is Morgan. I'm so thankful for all you've done and continues to do for me. Thank you for supporting me in my events. See you soon in Oregon with Jade.
Right on.
I think the brother was just, you know.
I know, dude. Please give me a hard time. I need it. I get cocky otherwise.
Exactly. This has been a great laid back episode, man. And I think that's why it's resonating with folks.
You're right on. I'm glad everybody's around doing their thing.
If I could quote you before we officially close out, I know I'm dragging this out. When we were setting up the interview with Tuhon Nick, and we were talking about PTK, he said something that was deep. He said, "Who's the best surfer at the beach? The guy who's having the most fun." You know, and I was thinking about that because sometimes we're just so serious with the training and with the PTK, and we forget to have fun. It means a lot.
Tuhon, Jesse, I'll appreciate that's Senior Chief Brian Brannon of Jody Foster's Army that told me that.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's a senior chief in public affairs in the Navy and the lead singer for Jody Foster's Army. So
Wow. Okay.
Awesome.
and a hell of a skateboarder and surfer. So
Keep dropping the jewels on us, Tuhon.
he's a good man.
Let's enjoy life, everybody.
Never miss a chance to steal somebody's good quote.
Hey, and you cite your source, sir. We love you, family. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all next Saturday. This is Ross Angola and Jenna having a great night with Tuhon Nick. Loyalty, wisdom, respect.
Life, health, and
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Peace.